Greetings and peace and love, everybody. Thank you for watching our channel. You're now tuned in to 13 Signs Astrology. My name is Ryan Hotep. I'm going to be your, I guess you could say, host today. No, I'm just joking. It's me, Ram Hotep, back at you with another video. Thank you guys for watching my video. And I'm going to do this video today on interesting topic. This video today is going to be on, it's going to be about spiritual systems. I'm going to do a series of videos dealing with spiritual systems, and I'm doing this for a reason. I've been getting a lot of inquiries from people, and they've been asking me questions about, since in metaphysics we talk about how people in religion try to use terms like God and put terms like God on every single aspect of creation. And since we believe that, then what do we believe as God, and what is our spiritual belief as people that are in the occult and people that are involved in metaphysics? And I can't speak for everybody pertaining to, you know, like when it comes to what occultist beliefs are. I mean, because occultist beliefs vary. But as you're going to see in these series of videos that I'm going to do this particular video today on witchcraft, or what some people will call Wicca. But I'm going to do various videos on spiritual systems. We'll be covering the Egyptian spiritual systems. We'll be covering a lot of the different spiritual systems across the world. And I'm talking about spiritual systems that predate Christianity. All of these videos will be based on spiritual systems that predate Christianity again. And I'm doing this because I was taught by one of my teachers that men and women and humans need a pattern to live their lives and to base their lives after and on. You see, men need a pattern to trace their lives around. They need a pattern. They need a blueprint. And this is important because we are all free spirits, but since we are in the realm of form and we are in the realm of structure, there are systems and ways of going about doing things here in the matrix. We are free spirits, but we have to be structured, which is a lesson that Saturn teaches us. Saturn teaches us structure. And this is where spiritual systems come in at. Spiritual systems are important because they help us to structure our lives. They help us to give us a standard to live our lives after. It's something to base our lives on. And I started off with the topic of Wicca and the topic of witchcraft and dealing with that for a reason. Now, you really don't see a lot of people nowadays talk about Wicca and witchcraft here, especially in America, because America is Christianized. It's a Christianized country. Now, America, keep in mind, was not established by Christians. That's what people think. America was not established by Christians. People say America is a Christian country. It's Christianized now, but America was founded by free thinking individuals who were enlightened. Thomas Paine, people like that. I mean, America was founded by those particular individuals. Now, we know they didn't discover America. I said founded, meaning established as, well, really a corporation, but that's a whole nother story. But at the end of the day, America was based upon really not religion, and then the Christianity and the whole religious ideology slowly crept into the fold and the structure of America. But America was founded by free thinking individuals. But I choose Wicca for a spiritual as my first spiritual system that I'm going to cover, because Wicca is actually something that a lot of people don't realize. It's probably one of the most important spiritual systems here in North America, as well as in Europe. Now, in Europe, and the particular brothers over in Europe, they're practicing their Wicca over there. A lot of people in Europe are still practicing Wicca because they're not as religious. Now, there is religion everywhere, of course, but they aren't as religious as people over here in America or whatever. Because people over here in America, when I say they're religious, I'm not saying religious like spiritual. I'm saying religious like in a sense of ignorant, dumb, and controlled. So when I say religious, no, that's what I'm talking about. So if that's offending you, hey, I can't do nothing about that. I have to speak light. I have to speak the truth. And religion has dumbed down us over here in America. It's really dumbed us down. And the whole school of Wicca and witchcraft, I'm going to start off, and I'm going to go ahead and break down Wicca and break down witch, actually. I'm going to break down witchcraft and go ahead and explain what that means. Now, witchcraft, if you go into the definition of it and the etymology of it, goes back to the term Wicca. And if you look up the term witch or witchcraft, it goes back to a witch is a female sorcerer. That's what a witch is, a female sorcerer. And a Wiccan is a wizard or a witch, and a wizard is a male sorcerer. So essentially a Wiccan is either a male or a female sorcerer. That's what a Wiccan is. So a witch goes back to a Wiccan or Wicca. The term witch goes back to Wicca. And that's where we get the term Wicca from when we talk about the Wiccan movement. Now, the Wiccan movement, they believe in a lot of things, Wiccans. There are a lot of Wiccans out there, I'm sure. I want to say peace and shout out to all my Wiccans. Peace and shout out to all my Wiccans. Now, some Wiccans are kind of religious. I mean, now again, Wicca, as far as the spiritual system goes back way past Christianity. Way past. Like when you talk about the Christians burning the witches and all of that, and a lot of people had past lives of them being one of those witches that got burned and all of that. When you talk about all of that, that goes back. That was the Wiccans. Though they were the witches and the wizards getting burned at the stake, especially the witches, because Wicca is a female system, as you're going to see in a minute as I start to cover it and break down different attributes of it. Wicca is a female based spiritual system, a feminine based spiritual system. And a lot of you hear me talk about matriarchy a lot, and how we used to be more of a matriarchal group of people as far as humans, but now we're patriarchal. Well, when you study Wicca, you'll see exactly how matriarchal societies were set up. Wicca is a great system to study when it comes to that. Now, Wiccans believe they have a moral belief. They do have a moral belief, and I'll cover it. It's very short. It's not like Christianity and all that. The moral belief is very simple and short. I love it. They do have a moral belief. They believe in magic, and they believe in reincarnation. So that's their, as far as magic, that's their spiritual system. Just like Christians pray and have faith, well, Wiccans believe in magic, and they use magic. They use that as to become practitioners, and to become Wiccans, you have to become a master at magic. Now, some Wiccans are religious, like I said, because what happened is this. Like Wicca, I'll go ahead and throw this in here now. Wicca was actually founded and started by the Moors. Let's point that out right here. The Wiccans were founded. The whole spiritual system of Wicca was founded and started by the Moors. Now, I know a lot of people are like, but most Wiccans are of European descent, and it's more so in Northern Europe. That's where Wicca started at. The whole religion of witches and witchcraft and Wicca, that goes back to Northern Europe. Yes, it goes back to Northern Europe, but again, we know that the Moors came from Northern Africa and went into Europe. Then went into different parts of Europe and brought in Egyptian spiritual systems into Europe, and they called these spiritual systems Wicca, amongst other things, of course, because there were more than one. But nowadays, in the 20s and 30s, what happened was that you had different Wiccans. Gardner is one of the main ones, or whatever. Gardner, one of the main wizards that came back out in like the 20s, I believe, or 30s, and came back out with the Wicca, and they set it up as more of a religion. And that's where the whole religion, as the religious aspect of Wicca comes from. It comes from when it came back out. See, originally back in the 1700s and 1600s, 1500s, and even before that, see, Wicca goes back 8,000 to 10,000 years. People don't realize that. Like, Wicca is pretty old. It goes way back past Christianity. Religion in general. Religion only goes back no more than 4,000 years. And Wicca goes back past twice that, 8,000 years. So Wicca is pretty old spiritual system. And in Wicca, they believe in the feminine principle. That's the main thing I want to point out here. They believe in the feminine principle, and they believe in what's called the triple goddess. It's like a triple goddess principle. And the triple goddess principle basically breaks down into the three aspects of the woman. Or it goes into the three phases of the moon as well, too. And I'll go ahead and point that out. First, it goes into the mother, the sister, and the daughter. So that's the first part of the triple goddess aspect. Then it goes into the waxing crescent, the full moon, and then the waning crescent. This is basically essentially the three phases of the moon, which represents the 3 degrees of Wicca. There's 3 levels when you get into formal Wiccan religions. There's 3 levels to it. Just like in Masonry, there's 3 degrees. There's 3 levels to it. So when you start to study Wicca, you start to see that Wicca is older than Masonry. You start to see that a lot of Masonry is in Wicca as well. A lot of those people that have studied a little bit of Masonry from, researched a little bit of Masonry from just a research point of view, will kind of know what I'm talking about and have researched Wicca, you'll know what I'm talking about. There's a lot of elements of Masonry mixed in with the Wicca, but the Wicca to me is way more spiritual and way more like Masonry is more so dealing with mundane principles. You're taking high spiritual principles and bringing them down to the mundane level. That's essentially what you're doing in Masonry, to build structures and physical things with the material things with. Now Wiccan can get spiritual and it's also material. It's both. You know what I'm saying? So it's a mixture of both. And the story, even the story of the triple phase lunar story is carried over into Masonry and under the Eastern Star story, but they add on a particular fourth woman or fourth type of woman or fourth archetype of a woman, which is the wife. So you have in the Eastern Star principle, I think it's Ada, Ruth, it's 4 women. I forgot the other 2. Somebody probably will put it in the notes in the comments or whatever, the other 2 women, but you got Ada, Ruth, and 2 other women that all represent different components of women, of females, and that's in the Eastern Star doctrine. Now, they took out wife in Wicca, or they never used wife. They didn't take it out because Wicca is older than the concept of Masonry, which is based on the Bible. Freemasonry is based on the Bible, and Wicca is older than the Bible, which we'll get into a little bit later. They have a different book that they use in Wicca, different spiritual book, but that's a whole other story, but we'll get into that in a minute. But as far as dealing with the triple goddess principle, they added in the wife into the Eastern Star part of it because, again, Masonry is patriarchal. Wicca is matriarchal, it's feminine in nature. So it was males in Wicca, but the women or the witches were the leaders. So many of you have watched my video when I talk about the women being the leaders and the males being the teachers. Well, this goes back to Wicca, the spiritual system of Wicca, which was dealing in the feminine principle. And this is important. I'm going to get back to my subject here, but this is important. I want to point this out here about the feminine principle, that you guys understand spiritual systems that were based on the feminine principle now because of the shift coming. And that's another reason why, or the shift that's taking place now, the shift of the ages. And that's another reason why I chose Wicca as one of the religions that I want to cover, of many, one of the spiritual sciences, that I'm going to cover, and spiritual systems that I'm going to cover, because it's a feminine religion, it's feminine based, and it shows you how they're set up and how they operated. And the concept of a wife was not used in Wicca because a wife is a slave. A wife is a slave, and that came from Masonry, which is patriarchal. Masonry and religion in general, the 3 Western religions, or the main religions that we know about today, are all what you would call patriarchal. They're controlled by men, and the patriarchal force is considered dominant, but it's not like that in Wicca. It's not like that in Wicca. Now, let's get into understanding the male aspect. There is a male aspect in Wicca, and the male aspect is the horned god. The horned god. Again, you see the horned god is carried over into Masonry up under the Baphomet, or the goat head, or the Capricorn. See, the horned god represents Capricorn because Wicca is a earth-centered spiritual system, and Capricorn is an earth sign. So Capricorns are the sign that represents taking intuition, higher intuition, and manifesting that into matter in the physical world. And that's what Capricorn represents on an esoteric level, and that goes back to Wicca, because Wicca teaches you, as you'll see in a minute, how to work with the elements and how to take these elements and by working what's called mental alchemy. See, people don't know what mental alchemy is. I'm going to do a video on alchemy. By working what's called mental alchemy, you learn how to use your will to cause change. That's what magic is. You use your will to cause change in the physical world. That's what magic is. It's essentially using the use of your will, applying the use of your will to manifest change here in the physical world. So that's what Wiccans do. That's what they specialize in doing. That's why magic is one of their main components and one of their main tools. Now, there's different types of magic. You have ceremonial magic, and then you have like more of a day-to-day type of magic. Now, ceremonial magic is what we call it's like group magic. Ceremonial magic is when a group of people come together to perform a particular ritual to invoke a particular deity. Now, this is just a one-on-one video, so I could do a whole video on ceremonial magic, so I can't really say too much about it here. But it's a higher form of magic dealing with more of a group form of magic and dealing with more of a collective. If you want more of a collective change, dealing with more of a collective change, that's called ceremonial magic. And it's more formal. It's formal, very formal. You do it at a certain time. You guys meet at a certain place. It has to be more than one person. That's ceremonial magic. Now, also in Wicca, they deal with more of a day-to-day magic, or what they would call folk magic. Folk magic is the casting of spells, love spells, rituals, dealing with more things to help better you as a person. That's what you would call day-to-day magic, or what you would call so-called folklore magic. So, basically, the only moral system tied into Wicca is pretty much harm none and do what thou wilt. Now, that's pretty much the moral system tied into it. When I was saying that that's the law, like, it's not like Christianity and these other religions where you got 1,000,001 laws. The law is one law. It's simple. Harm none and do what thou wilt. So you can do whatever you want to do as long as you don't harm nobody. That's basically similar to my motto, which is your liberty ends where my free will begins, meaning that you can do whatever you want to do, beloved, as long as you don't try to impede me and my free will. That's my motto. You can do whatever you want to do, but as soon as you bring it to me, then that's where the problem comes up at. But so, and that's really, even in, you study the Thelma religion, the religion of Thelma, which Aleister Crowley restarted in the school of Thelma, and in that they teach do without will shall be the whole of the law, and love is under will. Love is under will. That's what they teach in the school of Thelma, but actually will is up under love. Will is up under love, and they reversed it. You know, they reverse things. See, they don't know any better, but Aleister Crowley put love up under will, but really will is up under love. But the principle is the same. Do what thou wilt, but most people only quote do what thou wilt. I'm going to do whatever I want to do, but they forget about the love part. They forget about the love of the law. They forget about that part. So you do what thou wilt, as long as it doesn't conflict with anybody else's free will, as long as it doesn't infringe upon anybody's universal rights. You can do whatever you want to do. Now, the Wiccans is another interesting point. They deal with 5 elements. Wiccans deal with 5 elements. And the 5-pointed star that most people associate with the Wiccans represents the 5 elements, but it also represents something else that I'll point out here. Now, if you look at most of the stars on all the flags in different nations, you see a 5-pointed star. And on the elemental level, we know the 5-pointed star will represent air, earth, water, fire, and spirit or ether, which is the same thing. Spirit is ether. Back in the days, they didn't have a term for ether, and they thought ether was air, but it's not. So they used the term spirit for the 5th leg, but really it's ether. Ether is the 5th part. And you see that as the 5 points of a star representing the 5 elements, but the 5-pointed star is much deeper than that. The Moors that were responsible for founding the Wiccan religion were spiritual scientists. They were spiritual scientists, meaning that they were able to form initiates, and able and allowed to form spiritual religions and create spiritual systems. They were allowed to create spiritual systems. And I'm pointing that out because you see a lot of 5-pointed stars on many different flags in many different nations, because this goes back to what the 5-pointed star represented on an esoteric level in the mystery schools. And the 5-pointed star, beloved, represents what a lot of 5%ers would like to say is Allah. Allah. But let's talk about the metaphysics of Allah. See, the metaphysics of Allah and the science of Allah goes back to arm, leg, arm, head. Now, that's an acronym, and that is not what Allah means. I'm very aware of what Allah means in Arabic. I realize that it goes back to El-Ilah, or to invoke a deity. I realize that Ilah means deity, and El means a title or a proper noun meaning the. So the is El, and then Ilah, or deity. So Allah is essentially the deity. That's what Allah means in Arabic, and I know that. So I know somebody's going to say, well, that's not what Allah means. It doesn't mean arm, leg, arm, head. That's just some stuff 5%ers made up. No, Clarence 13X was an initiate. He was an occult initiate, meaning that he studied the occult. So he knew that Allah was not talking about some guide out there in the stars. Allah is a law. It's a law. And it means that I, self, law, and master. That's what Allah means. And I'm bringing all this up because I know you're like, well, hold on, you're talking about Islam and all of this stuff. And now you're saying I, self, law, and master, which is Islam. And you're saying Allah, which is Islam. Are you a Muslim? Are we talking about Islam here? No. This is dealing with the occult, beloved. See, before There was Islam and the religion and the stuff that you know, and Christianity and Jesus and all of that, and the Council of Nicaea. These words, a lot of these words were still around, but they meant something different. So what they did was they kept the original meanings and passed them down into occult schools and circles. And the occult schools and circles, you'll know that Allah, or the five-pointed star in general, so which is Allah. Allah equals the five-pointed star. That's the symbol for Allah. That's why Muslims use the five-pointed star and crescent, which is dealing with, the crescent is dealing with Wicca again, which I'll go into. Remember I told you about the three phases of the moon, dealing with Wicca. That goes back to Wicca. Remember, Wicca is older than Islam. And I'm pointing all this out because all of that comes from Wicca, even in Islam. You see how they care? See, the Moors brought the Quran into Europe. And that's why the Catholic Church has the Quran to this day. They have a Quran there. They worship Fatima. Why do you think? See, they know the truth. The Catholic Church knows the truth. And they knew that the Wiccans really held all of this information, man. That's why I said Wicca is one of the most important religions here in North America, because a lot of the religions all go back to Wicca. A lot of their spiritual systems, with the exception of Hebrewism. Hebrewism is much more extensive. They have a much more extensive spiritual system that does not go just trace back to Wicca. But Islam and Christianity, mostly everything that you're studying in that, it can be found in Wicca and more. So they have the male deity, then the triple female goddess deity, which is dealing with three versions of females. You notice it's only one version of a male, because the male, we already know, is pretty much essentially was up under the female in the Wiccan school of thought, because it was matriarchal. It was predominantly matriarchal. And what did Wiccans learn? Like, what did they learn outside of how to cast spells and put spells on people? Wiccans it wasn't about putting spells on people. It wasn't even about that. It was working with the elements to get what you want in the physical world. And Wiccans were masters of herbology, actually. Wiccans, a lot of the research that we have for herbs and the books that you get on herbs, like, we get these herb books and they tell us this herb is good for breaking up mucus, and that herb is good for that, and that herb is good for this. A lot of that research, though we've expounded on that research here in our modern world, a lot of that research was founded upon the Wiccans' research, because they were master herbologists, and they were masters in pharmacy. Actually, the term pharmaceuticals goes back to Wicca, again, which goes back to herbology and herbs. See, the term pharmacy goes back to herbology and eating and using food to heal yourself, because the Wiccans knew and mastered the system of herbs. They had this system of herbs mastered and that was because the Moors did so much traveling from China. See, the Moors, they were privileged to do a lot of traveling. So they knew about the herbs in China. They knew about the herbs in Europe. They knew about the herbs in Africa and in South America. The Moors was traveling all around this mug, so they knew about all of that. So that's why in the Wiccan school of thought and the system, they were able to document such an extensive library of just herbs, and that's where we get a lot of meanings for herbs and crystals to this day. Now the crystals goes back to Atlantis, actually, but I'm going to do a whole separate video on Atlantis, so we're not going to talk about that here. But so yeah, that's dealing with the herbs. Now, as far as going into covens, Wiccans, it's a few things that they use, like a few tools that they use, and those tools are pendulums, swords or knives, daggers, altars, different types of altars. There's different types of altars, and basically chalices. Wands, and rods. And they use many other tools. But those are the tools of a Wiccan. So, just like Christians, you can't leave home without your Bible, and your certain tools that you need to go to Sunday school. Well, that's how it is for a Wiccan. A Wiccan has their tools and the things that they use or whatever. So, most of these things that we use, like the pendulums and stuff, all of this stuff was founded, like, built in, like, the research. And I guess what I'm trying to say is, I guess the research that it took and the energy that it took to find out about how to work with a pendulum, and exactly the science of a pendulum and the science of a rod, and how to work with a rod, and what crystals are good for what. All this stuff was filed and documented and cataloged by the Wiccan school. Like, that's why we know about these things, like pendulums and stuff like that. That's why we know about it, and swords and what they mean. Now, the sword is something that's used in Islam as well. You notice that was carried over from the Wiccan culture. The sword was used in Wicca before it was used in Islam. Yes, it was used in Wicca. So most people say, well, Prophet Muhammad carried a sword, and they say he was carrying a sword to chop off people's heads, but they don't know the metaphysical meanings of what a sword is. Now, in this video, I'm not really breaking down any type of metaphysical meanings and getting into the esoteric aspect of Wicca. Notice I'm just talking about the spiritual system itself and just giving you a general overview of it, because the esoteric part I would not do on a YouTube video. So everything I'm saying, know that this is just the one-on-one aspect, and there's an esoteric aspect to the Wiccan school and spiritual system. Now, Wiccans have basically what is called, they have what's called Eastbots. Eastbots, which is pretty much, well, Eastbots are meetings or gatherings, a certain type of gathering, general gatherings that Wiccans have, because there's two different types of gatherings. There's Eastbots and Shabbats. That's where they actually see the term Sabbath, Shabbat. Shabbat actually was the term Sabbath in Hebrew. It's Shabbat. And that comes from Wicca. So you do see a little bit of the Hebrew beliefs in Wicca as well, as you can see. The term Shabbat, which is really what Halloween is. It's one of the Shabbats, actually. Now, the Wiccas have 13 lunar Eastbots. 13 lunar Eastbots. And they have 8 Shabbats a year. 8 Shabbats and 13 lunar Eastbots a year. Now, the 13 lunar Eastbots go into the Coven. Wiccans meet in what's called a Coven. And traditionally, it takes 13 witches and wizards, or Wiccans, to form a Coven. Traditionally. But, you know, here in America and in different places in Europe nowadays, they're not really sticking to the number like that. So you do have circles and covens that have less than 13 or whatever. So, but traditionally 13 was a number, which was 13 is a very mystical, magical number that is 13 constellations. I mean, you guys already know the significance of the number 13. I can go on and on about that. So that all came from the significance of the number 13. A lot of that research came through the Wiccans again. That's why we know about these things here in North America again. So the Wicca school of thought, again, is no joke. It's no joke. It's definitely something to be looked into if you're looking for a spiritual system to pattern your life after. Now, the Wiccans, they have a rites of passage. The Wiccans do have a rites of passage. They have many rites of passage, actually, or ceremonies and coming of age type of initiations. Marriages. It's many different rites of passages. Marriages can be considered a rites of passage when you turn a certain age, when you become a Wiccan. That's a rites of passage when you become an initiate. Because remember, you have to become an initiate, become a Wiccan. This is an initiate, is one called school. You have to be an initiate. And that's a particular rites of passage. And if you move to there's 3 degrees in Wicca. So when you move to your first and second degree, that's a rites of passage or a ritual or whatever. So there's different degrees. Now, something else that I want to point out is that in order to form a coven, because I mentioned covens. Now, Coven is basically used when a group of witches want to bring their energy together, and wizards want to bring their energy together to manifest something in the physical world, to change something. Usually, they want to use their will collectively, and this is part of ceremonial magic, to change something. That's what you would consider a coven. Now, a coven is interesting. Coven is interesting because it takes 13 witches, like I said, to form a coven, and you're working with energy and breaking down. Basically bringing all these people together, and you're bringing down energy from the higher states into the physical room of where you're at. And that's why it takes 13 witches to form a coven. Now, the number 13 is used because of course, the moon cycles and all of that stuff. I already pointed all of that out, but it's also because of the 13 star constellations. Now, the ancients did know about the 13 star constellations, and a lot of people say, well, the ancient Egyptians didn't even know about that. The ancients didn't know about 13 signs, and that's why I don't believe you. Well, they did, because when you deal with the number 13, if you look at the flower of life, the flower of life deals with the 13, or the fruit of life, the 13 circles. So that's the fruit of life, dealing with the 13 bodies, or 13 constellations, and there's actually 13 bodies up there in the universe. So that's dealing with the number 13 or whatever. So the whole concept of a coven in general is just interesting, based upon that number. And even when you get into exactly what a coven means, a coven is a meeting. That's essentially what it is. It's just a meeting or whatever. Now people, like, when they look at covens now, they associate it with witchcraft and demonery. And when you say you're meeting in a coven, of course you're going to be looked at as a witch or whatever, because of the connotations of what covens were based on witches meeting or whatever, a gathering of witches. But essentially, it's just a meeting when witches meet at a certain time. Now, to go ahead and shut this video down, I just want to go ahead and point out that Wicca is based on the 13 moon cycles, as I pointed out before. It's based on the 13 moon cycles. So the whole thing is really a lunar type of thing. The whole concept of Wicca is a lunar spiritual system that's based on, really, it was the reason why the Moors found it, and what it's really dealing with, a lot of people don't realize, it's really dealing with reincarnation. It's really dealing with reincarnation. When you work with the moon and the energies of the moon and the magnetism of the moon, and when you work with it in this life, you can cause yourself to come back. Like when you reincarnate back, you can essentially reincarnate back up under favorable circumstances when you work with the energies of the moon, and you can reincarnate back a lot quicker. And I talked about this before because a lot of high spiritual masters wanted to get into this science because they wanted to come back to this planet faster so that they can affect change on this planet. Like they want to come back more often instead of coming back every so many thousands of years. They want to come back every 30 years or every 40 years. So in order to do that, you have to work with the energies of the moon instead of the sun or the solar energies. So Wicca, it really more so ties into lunar energy more so. Like the whole school, it's more of a lunar school. The reason for that is because of the Moors. The Moors were a group of priests that came out of Egypt, but they represented what's called the lunar cycle. There's two cycles. There's a sun cycle and a moon cycle. Now, the moon cycle lasts for a certain amount of time. The sun cycle lasts for a certain amount of time. I have a video where I'm breaking down exactly how to tell the sun cycle from the moon cycle. So I'm not going to really go into that here, but it's based on the distance that we are from the central sun. See, we have our sun, and the earth is revolving around our sun, but then we have a central sun that the earth is revolving around, and the distance, like at different points, we're either far away from this sun or closer to this sun. When we're closer to the sun, that's the sun cycle. When we're further away from the central sun, where it was called the moon cycle or the lunar cycle. And Wicca was founded in the lunar cycle. It came about in the lunar cycle. It was basically found in the preparation when the Moors left out of Egypt or Kemet, because they knew they was getting ready to fall, and they saw what was getting ready to happen. And they knew that basically Europe was going to be the new place, or the new place for enlightenment, because enlightenment moves from place to place. Like enlightenment may be in Africa at one point. When I say enlightenment, this means, like, I guess you could say where enlightenment takes place, or where the spiritual center of the world. Like, the world always has a spiritual center, or the center chakra of the world. And at one point, of course, this was Kemet in Egypt. At one point, this was the spiritual center of the world. But then it moved into Europe. That became the spiritual center of the world with the Moors and what they did in Europe. Then in North America, this is now the spiritual center of the world, but that's changing. That's really over. And South America will become, and is really already, the new spiritual center of the world. And I'm going to do a video on that and breaking down how to tell why South America is the new spiritual center of the world and all of that. But at that time, during the lunar cycle, the spiritual center of the world was in Europe, in parts of Europe, and that's when the Moors came in and brought the school of Wicca into those different parts of Europe. So that's my pretty brief, I mean, it's kind of long or whatever, but kind of brief video on Wicca. I could have said a lot more. I just really want to kind of throw out some beliefs about Wicca, just to get people to start thinking on a level of outside of just Western religion. Like so many times, all we know is Christianity, Islam, and Hebrewism or Judaism, and we think that's it. That's all we know. We think you could be a Jew, Christian, or Hebrew, or atheist. That's all we think it is. And then, we hear about Buddhism and all that stuff, but we don't realize that there are spiritual systems that go back way past 4,000 and 5,000 years, way past that. And that's what I'm going to be covering. Like, this is just the first one. So bear with me. I'm going to go into more, have more exciting information, but I hope you like this video on Wicca. And for those people that are looking for a system, I want to say this too. Whatever system you choose, it's going to lead you back to the same point of origin. It's going to lead you back to basically your inner self and your 0 point origin. That's what it's going to lead you back to. So no matter if you decide Wicca is for you, or if you decide that Egyptology is for you, or so-called Egyptology or Kemetic sciences are for you, or if you decide that you want to deal more so with the Orishas or Voodoo, and that's more so for you, it's up to you. It doesn't matter really what you choose. Even if you decide that Christianity, mainstream Christianity is for you, or Western religion is for you, just know that the only thing I want you guys to be able to do is be able to extract truth. Like, if you're a Christian and that's your religion, I want you to be able to read the Quran and open up the Quran and be able to learn something, extract truth from it, and not look at it like that's what they believe and that's their book, that's the Muslim book. Because if you study the occult, and you understand all religions come from the same source, which is the occult. So there's more than one road to quote unquote God, as they say, or more than one system. That's up to you, whatever system fits you the best. Whether it's astrology, that's even a system in and of itself, outside of Wicca. So whether it's astrology, Wicca, the Orishas, more than one. See, I deal with more than one, and what I'm going to start to show you is how these systems really link together. Like I showed you how Wicca was tied into Masonry and the Western religions, I'm going to show you how different other systems tie into other systems and show you how really they're all talking about the same story. That's where I'm going with these videos as far as these spiritual system videos. I'm going to show you how all these systems are talking about the same story, but you can still choose one because each system may have been made for a particular type of individual. There's 13 potential, just on a sun sign, there's 13 potential characters that you can have just on a sun sign, but there's really over 100,000 different characters that different humans can have or whatever. So, I mean, and that's based on certain phases of the sun, moon, and the stars and all of that. So I'm just saying all that to say you got to find the system that's best for you. Choose a system you must. Choose a system you must because men need a pattern and women need a pattern to follow and to live their lives after. And that's going to do it for me. I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. And until we meet again, I'll leave you all in peace and love.